What if I told you there's a 1995 Toyota Camry taxi in Morocco that's driven over 800,000 miles and still purrs like it rolled off the showroom floor yesterday? Sounds impossible, right? Well, buckle up, because that's just the beginning. The 1990s was the golden decade when engineers forgot about profit margins and built cars like they expected them to survive nuclear winter. Today, we're counting down 12 vehicles from the 90s that were engineered to outlast civilizations. Number 12. Subaru Legacy, 1990 to 1999. The Subaru Legacy wasn't just a car. It was Japan's love letter to people who believed all-wheel drive shouldn't be optional equipment for rich people. When Subaru engineers designed this beast in the late 80s, they apparently forgot they were building a family sedan and instead created something that could conquer Mount Everest while still getting your kids to soccer practice on time. Here's where it gets crazy. The Legacy's boxer engine sat so low, it practically scraped the pavement, creating a center of gravity that physics professors use in textbooks. This horizontally opposed design wasn't just different, it was brilliantly insane. The H4 engines were so smooth and balanced, they'd run for 400,000 miles while barely registering on a vibration meter. The all-wheel drive system was standard, not optional. In the 90s, when most manufacturers treated AWD like jewelry for your driveway, Subaru said, "Why not give everyone the power to drive through hell's blizzard?" The result was automotive confidence in a sensible package. I once met a rural mail carrier from Vermont who drove a '92 Legacy wagon through snow that would make polar bears nervous, rain that could flood Noah's Ark, and heat that melted lesser vehicles. That Subaru delivered. After 18 years and 450,000 miles of rural punishment, it was still making appointed rounds. The paint had faded to primer in places. The interior looked like a used furniture store, but that boxer engine, still humming its horizontal hymn of reliability. Number 11. Geo Prizm, 1993 to 1997. Here's Detroit's best-kept secret. Some of the most bulletproof American cars of the 90s weren't actually American at all. The Geo Prizm was essentially a Toyota Corolla wearing Chevrolet makeup, fooling everyone into thinking General Motors had suddenly figured out how to build cars that didn't self-destruct after the warranty expired. This was badge engineering at its most genius. Toyota built it in their California plant with Japanese precision, Chevrolet slapped their bow tie on it, and customers got authentic Japanese reliability at General Motors prices. It was like getting a Rolex with a Timex price tag. The 1.6-liter and 1.8-liter engines were pure Toyota DNA, understressed, overbuilt, and engineered by people who considered 200,000-mile lifespans as barely broken in. While Chevrolet Cavaliers were having nervous breakdowns and transmission meltdowns, the Prizm just kept running like that annoying friend who never gets sick. Here's the beautiful irony. The Prizm was so reliable, it made its Chevrolet siblings look embarrassing. Taxi companies knew the secret. They'd buy fleets of these Chevrolets and run them into the ground, except the ground never came. These cars were automotive beige, invisible, dependable, and absolutely perfect for people who viewed transportation as a utility, not a fashion statement. Number 10. Infiniti Q45, 1990 to 1996. When Infiniti burst onto the luxury scene in 1989, they weren't just taking on German engineering supremacy, they were declaring total war with a weapon called the Q45. This wasn't Nissan's attempt at building a luxury car. This was their engineering masterpiece, wrapped in leather and powered by one of the most bulletproof V8s ever created. The heart of this beast was the VH45DE, a 4.5-liter V8 that produced 278 horsepower and seemed designed to run until the universe experienced heat death. This wasn't some temperamental European prima donna that required premium fuel and weekly therapy sessions with German technicians. This was a Japanese V8 built with Toyota-level reliability, but with the soul of a proper luxury cruiser. Now, if you're loving this journey through automotive immortality, smash that subscribe button and ring that notification bell. We're just getting warmed up with these mechanical legends. The Q45 was luxurious in ways that made BMW 7 Series owners question their life choices. The interior was a masterclass in Japanese attention to detail, real wood that looked expensive, leather that felt like butter, and build quality that made German cars seem almost primitive by comparison. While BMW owners were scheduling their third visit to Hans at the repair shop, Q45 owners were just changing their oil and smiling. These cars had active suspension that could read the road like a fortune teller, but unlike most electronic wizardry of the era, it actually worked for decades. Number 9. Volvo 850, 1991 to 1997. The Volvo 850 rolled into the 90s looking like a Swedish safety inspector's fever dream, angular, practical, and built to withstand the automotive equivalent of Ragnarok. But this wasn't your grandfather's boring Volvo. This was the car that proved safety and personality could coexist without one killing the other. Under that distinctly Scandinavian hood lived either a naturally aspirated 2.4-liter 5-cylinder or its turbocharged sibling. And both shared one critical characteristic. They were absolutely, positively, categorically unkillable. These engines weren't just reliable. They were mechanical cockroaches that would survive nuclear winter while still delivering smooth power. Volvo's obsession with crash safety created an unexpected side effect: ultimate durability. When you engineer a car to protect occupants in a 70F collision with a moose, yes, they actually test for that in Sweden, you tend to overbuild everything. The chassis was so rigid that Russ took one look and decided to find an easier target. Here's where it gets interesting. Volvo actually entered a wagon version in the British Touring Car Championship. Picture this, a station wagon, built for hauling IKEA furniture, racing against sports sedans, and actually being competitive. That's Swedish engineering confidence wrapped in practical family transportation. The 850th developed a cult following that bordered on religious devotion. Owners would pass down these cars through generations like family heirlooms, except these heirlooms could still hit 60 miles per hour in under 8 seconds after sitting in a barn for 2 decades. Number 8. Mazda B-Series Pickup, 1994 to 1997. Before pickup trucks became living rooms on wheels with monthly payments that could finance small nations, there were simple machines like the Mazda B-Series. These weren't trucks for ego massage. They were tools built for people who actually use trucks as trucks. The B2300, B3000, and B4000 models were studies in beautiful simplicity that would make a shaker furniture maker weep with joy. Manual everything. Transmission, windows, locks, steering. What wasn't there couldn't break, and what was there was built to survive the apocalypse with nothing more than basic maintenance and stubborn determination. These trucks had leaf spring suspension that was agricultural in its elegance and bulletproof in its execution. The frames were thick enough to serve as boat anchors in emergencies. I remember a landscaping crew that ran these B-Series trucks, loaded beyond any reasonable capacity, maintained with hope and duct tape, and they just kept working. Here's the secret sauce. Mazda's partnership with Ford created the perfect marriage of Japanese engineering philosophy with American truck practicality. The engines were non-interference designs, meaning if your timing belt decided to commit suicide, you just slapped on a new one and kept rolling. No catastrophic engine damage, just minor inconvenience and a $50 repair bill. One truck in that landscaping fleet hit 400,000 miles and burned oil like a 2-stroke chainsaw, but it started every morning without fail. The owner finally retired it, not because it died, but because he got tired of explaining to customers why his work truck looked like it had survived a small war. Number 7. Jeep Cherokee XJ, 1990 to 2001. The Cherokee XJ represents what happens when engineers accidentally stumble upon perfection and management doesn't notice for an entire decade. This unibody SUV could outcrawl body-on-frame trucks while getting decent gas mileage and actually fitting in normal parking spaces. Revolutionary concepts in the 90s SUV world. The magic ingredient was the 4.0-liter inline-6 engine, an iron block legend so understressed it barely knew it was working. This power plant produced 190 horsepower and 225 pound-feet of torque, numbers that sound modest today but came with anvil-like reliability that redefined what bulletproof meant in automotive terms. People would add turbochargers and squeeze 400 horsepower from completely stock internals. Try that with your modern aluminum engine and see what explodes first. The 4.0-liter was so robust that Jeep owners would joke about needing to hit it with sledgehammers to stress test it properly. Here's where the Cherokee became truly legendary. The aftermarket went absolutely insane. When the same basic vehicle is produced for nearly 2 decades, the aftermarket has time to perfect everything. Every part, every upgrade, every possible modification became available and affordable. College kids have been buying beat-up Cherokees for $2,000, driving them mercilessly through 4 years of college abuse, then selling them for $2,000 to the next generation of students. It's the automotive circle of life, and the Cherokee is the Mufasa that never dies. The U.S. Postal Service bought thousands for rural mail delivery. An organization that destroys vehicles for a living chose the Cherokee because they needed something that wouldn't quit. 20 years later, many of those mail Jeeps are still running. Number 6. Honda Accord, 1990 to 1993. The 4th-generation Honda Accord represents Honda at its absolute engineering zenith. This was before they got complicated, before they got fancy, before accountants started making decisions that engineers should make. This was Honda doing what Honda did best, building sensible cars that would run until the universe experienced heat death. The engine lineup was a festival of mechanical perfection. The 2.2-liter F22 4-cylinder was smooth as silk, and so understressed it barely noticed highway speeds. These engines achieved their power numbers without breaking a mechanical sweat, and more importantly, they maintained those numbers for decades. Honda's manufacturing philosophy during this era was revolutionary. Build reputation, not just cars. Every component was designed to last not just the warranty period, but geological time periods. The paint was applied like they expected these cars to sit outdoors for decades. The interior plastics were engineered with quality that made German cars seem cheap. I had a neighbor who bought a 1992 Accord new, base model, manual everything, cloth seats. He drove it for 25 years through college, career changes, marriage, kids, and midlife crisis. When he finally sold it in 2017, it had 380,000 miles on the original engine and transmission. The manual transmissions in these Accords were telepathic, smooth, precise, and practically indestructible. Honda's gearboxes from this era were works of mechanical art, engineered with tolerances that would make Swiss watchmakers jealous. The automatics were equally robust, prioritizing durability over excitement. Number 5. Ford F-150, 1992 to 1996. The 9th-generation F-150 caught Ford at a sweet spot in pickup evolution. This was after they'd figured out fuel injection, but before they'd made trucks complicated with unnecessary electronics. The result was a pickup that could survive anything short of a direct meteor strike while still asking for more work. The engine lineup read like a greatest hits album of American V8 engineering. The 4.9-liter inline-6, affectionately known as the 300, was agricultural in its simplicity and legendary for its durability. It made decent power and spectacular torque, and would run poorly longer than most modern engines would run well. The real stars were the V8s. The 302 and 351 Windsor engines were old-school pushrod units that had been refined over decades of real-world use. By the 90s, Ford had worked out every possible bug, leaving only the good stuff. Understressed power plants that could run for 300,000 miles on nothing but basic maintenance and determination. These weren't sophisticated engines, they were hammers, and sometimes you need a hammer. The 302 was smooth and refined, perfect for daily driving. The 351 was a torque monster that could pull stumps out of the ground while barely working. A contractor I knew ran a fleet of these trucks, buying them used and driving them into the ground, except the ground never came. His record holder was a 1994 F-150 with the 306 that hit 500,000 miles on the original engine. It burned oil, leaked every fluid known to automotive science, and looked like it had survived several small wars, but it started every morning and worked every day. Number 4. Nissan Maxima, 1995 to 1999. The 4th-generation Nissan Maxima was Nissan's declaration of war against automotive mediocrity. This wasn't just a good sedan. This was Nissan proving they could build a sports car disguised as family transportation and make it more reliable than a Swiss train schedule. The heart of this machine was the VQ30DE, a 3.0-liter V6 that would become one of the most celebrated engines in automotive history. While most family sedans were making do with 140 horsepower, the Maxima delivered 190 horses and 205 pound-feet of torque with the smoothness of a turbine engine. This engine was so well engineered that people routinely drove these cars past 300,000 miles without opening the engine bay for anything more serious than oil changes. The variable valve timing was simple and reliable, no complicated computer-controlled systems waiting to fail, just mechanical precision that worked flawlessly for decades. The chassis was where Nissan really showed their engineering prowess. Multi-link rear suspension in a front-wheel drive sedan was exotic car technology in the mid-90s. The handling was spectacular for a family car. It could carve corners like a sports sedan while still riding like a luxury cruiser. One taxi driver in Las Vegas put 500,000 miles on his Maxima running airport routes 24/7. When he finally retired it, the engine still ran like new, the transmission shifted perfectly, and the only reason he replaced it was because the interior had been sat in by roughly half of America. Number 3. Toyota 4Runner, 1990 to 1995. The second-generation Toyota 4Runner was Toyota's engineering philosophy taken to its logical extreme. This wasn't just a reliable SUV. This was Toyota proving what happens when you prioritize durability above everything else, including common sense and profit margins. The engine options were legends disguised as ordinary power plants. The 22 RE 4-cylinder was already famous from the pickup trucks. It made modest power, but would run forever on neglect and hope. Once Toyota sorted out the V6's early head gasket issues, it became equally immortal. The 4Runner's party trick was its removable top, making it the only convertible SUV that actually worked. The mechanism was brilliantly simple: unbolt and lift. What could possibly go wrong? Nothing. And nothing ever did. This was Toyota engineering at its most elegant, taking a complex idea and making it foolproof. Everything about the 4Runner was designed for longevity, not just reliability. The frame was galvanized and massive. The body panels were thick steel with corrosion protection that could survive decades of neglect. The solid axle front suspension was simple, strong, and fixable with basic tools in the middle of nowhere. I worked with a guy who bought a 1992 4Runner new and drove it for 18 years. By 2010, it had 450,000 miles of hard use, daily driving, weekend adventures, cross-country trips, and occasional light commercial duty. Original engine, original transmission, original transfer case. The only major repairs were wear items, clutches, brakes, and shocks. Number 2. Mercedes-Benz W124 E-Class, 1990 to 1995. When Mercedes-Benz built the W124 E-Class in the early 90s, they apparently decided that cost-cutting was a dirty phrase that should never be uttered in polite company. This wasn't just a luxury car. This was German engineering when money was no object and reliability was everything. The diesel engines were masterpieces of over-engineering that redefined what reliable meant in automotive terms. The OM602 and OM603 diesels didn't just run for 500,000 miles, they considered that barely broken in. These engines were so ridiculously overbuilt, it bordered on the absurd. A taxi driver in Frankfurt once showed me his W124 diesel with 1.2 million kilometers on the odometer. That's 750,000 miles on the original engine and transmission. The interior still looked presentable, the engine still purred like a mechanical cat, and it drove exactly like a Mercedes should. That's not just reliability, that's automotive immortality. The body construction was obsessive even by German standards. Mercedes used thick steel, galvanized it, then added so much rust protection that these cars could survive decades of northern salt without showing a spot of corrosion. The paint was applied in multiple coats and baked to perfection. The suspension was complex but robust. Multi-link rear systems that rode like clouds and handled like sports cars. When bushings finally wore out after 200,000 miles, replacements were expensive but lasted another 200,000. The engineering philosophy was simple: make it right the first time, then make it even better. Number 1. Toyota Camry, 1992 to 1996. At the top of our countdown sits the third-generation Toyota Camry, and honestly, calling it just a reliable car is like calling the ocean a bit damp. This wasn't just built to last. This was Toyota's engineering masterpiece that redefined what automotive reliability meant and made every other manufacturer question their entire approach to building cars. This Camry represented Toyota at their absolute peak. They took everything they'd learned about building bulletproof vehicles, turned it up to 11, decided that wasn't enough, and somehow found a way to turn it up to 15. The result wasn't just transportation, it was a mechanical promise that this machine would never, ever let you down. The engines were legendary. The 2.2-liter 5SFE four-cylinder made 130 horsepower and would continue making that exact power until the universe experienced heat death. The 3.0-liter V6 produced 185 horsepower with the same immortal characteristics. These weren't exciting engines. They were impossibly, incredibly, unbelievably reliable. Here's what made these Camrys truly special: Toyota's approach to building them. They didn't just want to build a reliable car. They wanted to build the reliable car that would become the gold standard against which all others would be measured. Every component was tested to destruction, then redesigned to be stronger. Every system was simplified to its essential elements. I have a neighbor who still daily drives her 1994 Camry that she bought new. It has 485,000 miles on the original engine and transmission. She's religious about maintenance, but still, nearly 500,000 miles. It runs smoothly, starts every morning without fail, and still gets 30 miles per gallon on the highway. Her mechanic jokes that it'll outlive both of them, and honestly, he's probably right. The transmissions were equally bulletproof. The 5-speed manual was rare but indestructible, while the 4-speed automatic was engineered to shift smoothly and reliably for geological time periods. These weren't sophisticated transmissions. They were built to work perfectly for decades, and that's exactly what they did. That's your countdown of 12 cars from the 1990s that were basically built to last until the end of time. Which one shocked you the most? I bet half of you didn't expect that Camry to take the crown. Drop your high-mileage stories in the comments. I want to hear about your 400,000-mile Honda or your million-mile Mercedes. And hey, if you enjoyed this trip through automotive immortality, smash that like button and subscribe for more content about the cars that absolutely refuse to die. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.